Welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Before settling in, it would be lovely to know where in the world this video is being watched from. Perhaps a quiet bedroom with the lights dimmed low, a late evening journey home, or a comfortable corner of the sofa with a warm drink within reach. Wherever this finds you, the hope is that you are relaxed, safe, and ready for a gentle wander through tonight's ideas. If these slow journeys through science are something you enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps this calm little corner of the internet continue drifting along. And for everyone who has already subscribed, thank you sincerely. The quiet support behind this channel means more than can easily be put into words. Now, the intention tonight is not to make the subject so fascinating that sleep becomes impossible. But if that does happen, at least the time awake might come with a slightly deeper understanding of the strange world hidden far beneath the ocean's surface. A place where pressure grows immense, sunlight disappears entirely, and life somehow continues regardless. So, let's begin gently. How deep does our planet really go, and what exists in the deepest places on Earth? The surface of Earth often gives the impression of familiarity. Mountains rise toward the sky, valleys sink gently between them, and the landscape unfolds across plains, forests, and deserts that seem easy enough to picture. Yet most of the planet does not resemble the places people walk across each day. Much of Earth's true landscape lies hidden beneath the oceans, and in those unseen depths, the planet reveals an entirely different geography. Beneath the rolling surface of the sea exists a vast vertical world. It is a world not defined only by distance across the horizon, but by distance downward. In some places, the descent continues for miles. Entire mountain ranges sit submerged beneath the water. Enormous plains stretch across the seafloor, larger than many continents, and scattered among these features are deep ocean trenches, long narrow depressions carved into Earth's crust that descend farther than any canyon on land. Among all of these places, one stands apart as the deepest location known anywhere on the planet. In the western Pacific Ocean lies a long curved trench that runs roughly along the boundary between two immense tectonic plates. This region is called the Mariana Trench. At its deepest point sits a small valley known as Challenger Deep, a location so far below the ocean's surface that the tallest mountain on land could disappear into it and still leave water overhead. The deepest measured points of Challenger Deep reach nearly 11 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. To picture this depth, imagine beginning at sea level and descending downward through darkness for almost 7 miles before reaching the seafloor. At that point, the weight of the ocean above presses down with extraordinary force, creating one of the most extreme environments on Earth. The existence of such depths reveals something important about the planet itself. Earth is not merely a sphere wrapped in a thin ocean layer. Instead, the ocean forms a vast and continuous global system whose depth varies dramatically from place to place. Shallow coastal shelves gently slope away from continents. Farther out, the seabed drops steeply into deep basins known as abyssal plains, and in a few rare regions the crust bends downward even further to form the immense trenches where the deepest environments exist. These vertical differences create environments as distinct from one another as deserts are from forests. Near the ocean surface, sunlight shines brightly, supporting the familiar world of fish, plankton, and coral reefs. But as depth increases, light begins to fade. Temperature falls, pressure rises. Eventually, sunlight disappears entirely, leaving only darkness and cold water pressing in from every direction. Yet for a long time, scientists did not fully understand what might exist in those distant depths. In the 19th century, before modern instruments allowed precise measurements, some naturalists believed that the deep ocean might be completely lifeless. One of the most influential voices behind this idea was the British naturalist Edward Forbes. Edward Forbes studied marine life during the 1800s and proposed what became known as the azoic hypothesis. According to this idea, life could not survive beyond a certain ocean depth. Forbes believed that somewhere below a few hundred meters, the conditions would become too extreme for organisms to endure. Darkness, pressure, and cold temperatures seemed likely to prevent any form of biology from continuing. For a time, this hypothesis seemed reasonable. The deep ocean was almost impossible to observe directly. Ships could lower dredging equipment into the water, but collecting samples from great depths was difficult and unreliable. Much of what existed in the deep sea remained hidden beyond the reach of early technology. That picture began to change in the 1870s during an ambitious scientific expedition aboard a research vessel called HMS Challenger. Over the course of several years, scientists aboard the ship travelled across the world's oceans taking measurements, collecting samples, and lowering instruments into waters far deeper than had ever been studied before. The HMS Challenger expedition revealed something remarkable. Not only did life exist far below the depths Edward Forbes had predicted, but it appeared in surprising abundance. Strange organisms were discovered living in waters thousands of meters beneath the surface. These discoveries quietly dismantled the azoic hypothesis and opened an entirely new field of scientific exploration. Since those early expeditions, the effort to understand Earth's oceans has continued to grow. Today, researchers use advanced sonar systems, robotic submersibles, and satellite measurements to study the structure of the seafloor in extraordinary detail. Yet even with these modern tools, much of the deep ocean remains unexplored. To address this gap in knowledge, several international projects now aim to map the entire ocean floor. One of the most ambitious is an effort known as Seabed 2030. Supported in part by the Nippon Foundation, this initiative seeks to create a complete map of the global seafloor before the year 2030 arrives. Mapping the ocean floor may sound like a straightforward task, but the scale of the challenge is enormous. Earth's oceans cover more than 70% of the planet's surface. In many places, the water is several kilometers deep. Even with modern technology, charting these depths requires patience, cooperation, and thousands of hours of data collection. Despite these difficulties, the effort continues because understanding the ocean floor reveals far more than geography. The deepest parts of Earth provide insight into many different branches of science. Geology explains how trenches form where tectonic plates collide, and one slab of crust sinks beneath another. Physics helps describe the enormous pressures created by kilometers of water pressing downward. Microbiology explores the strange forms of life that survive in darkness and extreme conditions. Even planetary science finds relevance in these depths. By studying the most extreme environments on Earth, scientists gain clues about where life might survive on other worlds. Beneath the icy surfaces of distant moons, such as Europa or Enceladus, hidden oceans may exist under conditions surprisingly similar to those found in Earth's deepest trenches. The deepest places on this planet therefore sit at a remarkable crossroads of scientific understanding. Within the Mariana Trench and other deep ocean environments, the processes of geology, chemistry, biology, and physics meet in ways rarely seen elsewhere. And yet, for all that scientists have learned, the deepest regions of Earth remain among the least familiar landscapes on the planet. Few people have ever visited them. Most of the seafloor has never been seen directly by human eyes. Vast stretches of the deep ocean remain unexplored, waiting quietly beneath kilometers of dark water. From the surface, the Pacific Ocean often appears calm and endless. But far below those waves lies a hidden world shaped by immense forces and extreme conditions. In those depths, the planet reveals some of its most extraordinary landscapes, stretching downward into darkness where pressure grows immense and the boundaries of life are pushed to their limits. It is within these silent regions that Earth's deepest environments begin to unfold, revealing a vertical frontier that continues to challenge scientific understanding. The deepest places on Earth do not appear by accident. They are the result of slow, powerful movements taking place deep within the planet itself, movements so gradual that a human lifetime barely notices them, yet so immense that they reshape continents and oceans over millions of years. Beneath the oceans, Earth's outer shell is not a single unbroken surface. Instead, the crust and the uppermost part of the mantle form a rigid layer known as the lithosphere. This lithosphere is divided into enormous sections called tectonic plates. Each plate may span thousands of kilometers, carrying with it continents, ocean basins, and mountain ranges as it moves. These plates drift slowly across the surface of the planet. The motion is extremely gradual, usually only a few centimeters each year, about the speed that fingernails grow. But over tens of millions of years, those tiny movements accumulate, shifting entire oceans and rearranging the geography of the world. The scientific framework that explains these movements is known as the theory of plate tectonics. Today it is one of the central ideas in modern geology, but reaching that understanding required decades of investigation and careful mapping of the ocean floor. One of the most influential contributors to that effort was the American geophysicist Marie Tharp. During the mid-20th century, Marie Tharp worked with vast collections of sonar data gathered by research ships. These measurements revealed the contours of the seafloor in remarkable detail. By carefully plotting thousands of individual soundings, she produced the first comprehensive maps of the ocean floor. Those maps revealed something unexpected. Running through the middle of the Atlantic Ocean was a continuous underwater mountain chain known as the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Similar ridges appeared throughout the world's oceans, forming an interconnected system that circled the globe. These discoveries provided powerful evidence that Earth's crust was not fixed in place, but was slowly spreading apart in some regions while sinking in others. At the same time, scientists studying earthquake patterns noticed that seismic activity often formed long, narrow zones stretching deep beneath the oceans. Japanese seismologist Kyu Wadati and American geologist Hugo Benioff independently documented these sloping earthquake zones, now known as Wadati-Benioff zones. Their work revealed that slabs of Earth's crust were descending into the planet's interior. Taken together, these observations helped confirm that tectonic plates are constantly being created, moved, and recycled. In some regions, new crust forms along mid-ocean ridges where molten material rises from the mantle. In other places, older crust bends downward and sinks beneath neighbouring plates. These downward bending regions are called subduction zones, and it is here that the deepest ocean trenches are born. Imagine the edge of a massive tectonic plate slowly approaching another. As the plates converge, the denser one begins to slide beneath the other. Over time, the edge of that descending plate bends downward into the mantle. The surface above it sinks as well, forming a long narrow trench along the boundary between the plates. The Mariana Trench formed through exactly this process. In the western Pacific Ocean, the Pacific Plate moves slowly toward the smaller Mariana Plate. Because the Pacific Plate is older and denser, it sinks beneath the Mariana Plate in a subduction zone. As the Pacific Plate bends downward into the mantle, the seafloor above it dips sharply, creating the extraordinary depth of the Mariana Trench. This bending process is not gentle. The descending plate curves steeply downward, sometimes plunging at angles that carry it hundreds of kilometers into Earth's interior. Along that descent, earthquakes occur as the rock fractures and adjusts to the immense forces acting upon it. But what actually drives this enormous movement of tectonic plates? One important mechanism is known as slab pull. When a tectonic plate becomes old and cold, it grows denser than the surrounding mantle. As the plate begins to sink into the mantle at a subduction zone, its own weight pulls the rest of the plate along behind it. Geophysicist Donald Forsyth studied these dynamics in detail, helping clarify how slab pull acts as one of the strongest forces controlling plate motion. In simple terms, once a plate begins sinking, gravity assists the process, drawing the slab deeper into the mantle and gradually pulling the rest of the plate across the ocean floor. However, slab pull is only part of a much larger planetary system. Beneath the crust lies the mantle, a vast layer of rock that slowly flows over geological time. Although mantle rock appears solid on human timescales, under the immense pressures and temperatures inside Earth, it behaves more like an extremely thick fluid. Within this mantle, heat from the planet's interior creates slow circulating currents. These movements are known as mantle convection. Hotter material rises gradually toward the surface, while cooler material sinks deeper into the interior. Over millions of years, these slow flows help push and pull tectonic plates across the planet. Some geophysicists propose that convection occurs throughout the entire mantle in what is known as whole mantle circulation. In this view, descending slabs from subduction zones may sink all the way to the boundary between the mantle and Earth's core before gradually rising again in other regions. Seismic imaging techniques, which measure how earthquake waves travel through the planet, have revealed structures deep within the mantle that may represent these descending slabs. In some cases, scientists have traced the remnants of ancient oceanic plates nearly 3,000 kilometers beneath the surface, yet the story may be even more complex. In addition to sinking slabs, enormous columns of hot material called mantle plumes may rise from deep within the mantle toward the surface. These plumes are thought to create volcanic hotspots such as the Hawaiian Islands. Some researchers now explore the possibility that mantle plumes and descending slabs interact with one another in complicated ways. A sinking plate might alter the flow of surrounding mantle material, while rising plumes could influence the movement of nearby plates. Over millions of years, these interactions may shape the long-term evolution of Earth's tectonic system. Geophysicists such as Thorsten Becker and Louise Kellogg have studied how these deep mantle structures influence the behavior of the entire planet. Their work suggests that tectonic plates, mantle convection, and plume activity may form an interconnected feedback system, extending from the surface all the way to the deepest layers of the mantle. Viewed from this perspective, the Mariana Trench is not simply a deep groove in the seafloor. It is the visible surface expression of immense geological processes unfolding deep within Earth's interior. The Pacific Plate continues its slow descent beneath the Mariana Plate, sliding downward centimetre by centimetre each year. Over millions of years, this motion gradually recycles vast sections of oceanic crust back into the mantle. The trench above marks the boundary where one chapter of the crust's journey ends and another begins. Far below the ocean surface, the planet is quietly reshaping itself. Massive slabs of rock sink into the mantle, currents of heated material circulate through Earth's interior, and the slow machinery of plate tectonics continues its steady work. And at the surface of that immense process lies one of the deepest places on Earth, the Mariana Trench, a silent record of forces operating far beneath the waves. For most of human history, the oceans were experienced only at their surface. Ships crossed them, storms shaped them, and sailors watched the horizon with curiosity, but the depths beneath remained almost entirely unknown. The water below a vessel might stretch downward for thousands of meters, yet for centuries no reliable way existed to measure that distance with precision. The deep ocean was not only unseen, it was in many ways unimaginable. Early attempts to measure ocean depth were surprisingly simple. Sailors would lower long ropes weighted with lead toward the seafloor, a method known as lead line sounding. When the weight touched the bottom, the rope would go slack, allowing the depth to be estimated by measuring the length of line that had been lowered. This approach worked reasonably well in shallow coastal waters, but it quickly became impractical in the open ocean. When the seafloor lay several kilometers below the surface, the rope could drift sideways in ocean currents or fail to reach the bottom at all. Even so, these early measurements provided the first hints that the ocean floor was far deeper than anyone had suspected. During the middle of the 19th century, interest in the deep sea began to grow among scientists who wondered what might exist beneath the waves. That curiosity eventually led to one of the most important scientific voyages ever undertaken. In the year 1872, a British naval vessel named HMS Challenger set sail on a research expedition that would last nearly 4 years. On board were scientists tasked with studying the oceans in a way never attempted before. The Challenger expedition travelled across the Atlantic, Pacific and Indian Oceans, stopping regularly to collect samples and take measurements. The crew lowered long weighted lines into the water to determine depth. They dredged the seafloor for sediment and organisms. They measured water temperature and studied marine chemistry. For the first time, the deep ocean was being explored systematically rather than guessed at from a distance. During this voyage, the scientists aboard HMS Challenger discovered that the ocean floor contained immense variations in depth. Some areas were relatively shallow, but others plunged thousands of meters downward. One of the deepest measurements taken during the expedition occurred in the western Pacific Ocean, where a sounding revealed an astonishing depth of more than 8 kilometers. Later surveys refined these measurements, eventually identifying the Mariana Trench as the deepest region in the world's oceans. The early measurements from HMS Challenger did not yet reveal the full depth of Challenger Deep, but they opened the door to modern oceanography by proving that the deep ocean was both measurable and scientifically accessible. Despite these achievements, measuring ocean depth with ropes remained slow and difficult work. Each measurement required lowering kilometers of line and waiting patiently for the weight to reach the seafloor. Mapping large areas of the ocean floor this way would have taken centuries. A technological breakthrough arrived during the 20th century with the development of sonar, short for sound navigation, and ranging. This method relies on sound waves rather than ropes to measure depth. The principle behind sonar is elegantly simple. A research vessel sends a short pulse of sound downward into the water. The sound wave travels through the ocean until it strikes the seafloor, where it reflects upward toward the ship. By measuring how long it takes for the echo to return, scientists can calculate the depth. The calculation follows a straightforward physical relationship between distance, speed, and time. Sound travels through seawater at roughly 1,500 meters per second. If the echo returns after a certain amount of time, the total distance traveled by the sound wave can be determined. Because the sound travels downward and then back upward, the depth equals half of that total distance. In words, the relationship can be expressed as distance equals speed multiplied by time, with the final depth obtained by dividing the total travelled distance by 2. Using sonar, ships could measure ocean depth almost continuously while moving across the sea. This allowed scientists to create detailed profiles of the seafloor far more quickly than before. As sonar technology improved, the shapes of underwater mountains, valleys and trenches began to appear with increasing clarity. One of the scientists who played a crucial role in developing modern physical oceanography was the American geophysicist Walter Munk. Often called the father of modern ocean acoustics, Walter Munk helped advance the understanding of how sound travels through seawater. His research at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography contributed to improved sonar techniques and to the broader study of ocean circulation and wave dynamics. Walter Munk also participated in the development of large-scale acoustic experiments designed to study ocean temperature and structure. By analysing how sound waves propagate through the ocean over long distances, researchers could infer properties of the water itself, including temperature variations and large-scale circulation patterns. As sonar mapping continued through the 20th century, scientists gradually assembled a global picture of the seafloor. They discovered vast mountain chains known as mid-ocean ridges, enormous abyssal plains stretching across deep basins, and narrow trenches marking the boundaries of tectonic plates. Yet even sonar mapping had its limitations. Research ships could only survey the regions they physically travelled across, leaving enormous gaps between mapped tracks. For a planet whose oceans cover most of its surface, filling in those gaps remained an enormous challenge. A surprising solution emerged from space. Satellites orbiting Earth can measure the height of the ocean surface with extraordinary precision using instruments known as radar altimeters. At first glance, this might seem unrelated to mapping the seafloor, but the connection lies in gravity. Underwater mountains and trenches slightly alter the gravitational field of the planet. Where a large mass of rock lies beneath the ocean floor, the gravitational pull is slightly stronger. This extra pull causes a tiny bulge in the ocean surface directly above it. Conversely, deep trenches create slight depressions in the surface of the ocean. These variations are incredibly small, often only a few centimeters in height, but satellites are sensitive enough to detect them. By carefully measuring these subtle changes in sea surface height, scientists can infer the shape of the seafloor far below. Satellite altimetry therefore provides a powerful tool for mapping vast areas of the ocean that ships have not yet visited. Even with these technological advances, the deep ocean continues to guard many of its secrets. To explore specific regions in greater detail, researchers now deploy autonomous underwater vehicles and remotely operated robotic systems. These machines can travel thousands of meters beneath the surface, carrying cameras, sensors, and mapping instruments into environments too deep or dangerous for human divers. Some of these robotic explorers glide slowly over the seafloor, scanning the terrain with high-resolution sonar systems. Others descend into trenches like the Mariana Trench, collecting biological samples and capturing images of organisms adapted to extreme pressure and darkness. Despite this growing fleet of advanced technology, one remarkable fact remains. Large portions of the ocean floor remain poorly mapped. In fact, the detailed maps available for the surface of the Moon often exceed those available for many parts of Earth's seafloor. The reason is simple scale. Earth's oceans cover more than 70% of the planet. Mapping every kilometre of that submerged terrain requires enormous effort, careful coordination, and many years of exploration. Yet the work continues steadily. Each expedition reveals new details about the shape of the seabed and the strange environments hidden beneath the waves. What began with ropes and weighted lines during the voyage of HMS Challenger has grown into a global scientific effort involving satellites, robotic explorers, and advanced acoustic technology. Through these tools, humanity has begun to glimpse the landscapes lying far below the surface of the sea, and while the deepest parts of the ocean remain distant and mysterious, they are no longer entirely beyond reach. Far below the surface of the ocean, something begins to change long before the seafloor comes into view. Sunlight disappears, temperatures fall, and the water grows steadily heavier. Every additional metre of depth adds more weight pressing downward. Eventually, that weight becomes so immense that it transforms the very behaviour of matter. The physical force responsible for this transformation is known as hydrostatic pressure. It arises from the simple fact that water has mass, and mass under gravity exerts force. Each layer of ocean water rests upon the layer beneath it, and the deeper a location lies, the more water sits above it. At sea level, the atmosphere already presses down with a measurable force. This pressure comes from the weight of the air in Earth's atmosphere, and it amounts to roughly 100,000 newtons acting on every square meter of surface. The human body has evolved to live comfortably under that pressure, rarely noticing it. But in the ocean, pressure increases rapidly with depth, because water is far denser than air. Roughly every 10 meters of descent adds another atmosphere of pressure. That means by the time a diver reaches a depth of 100 meters, the surrounding pressure has already increased to about 11 times what exists at the surface. Continue downward into the deepest trenches of the ocean, and the numbers become astonishing. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, where Challenger Deep lies nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface, the pressure reaches more than 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure experienced on land. Every square centimeter of an object resting there must withstand a crushing force equivalent to the weight of a small automobile pressing down upon it. Despite the dramatic nature of these numbers, water itself remains remarkably calm under such conditions. Liquids are largely incompressible, meaning they do not change their volume easily when pressure increases. This property allows the ocean to transmit pressure smoothly in every direction, a phenomenon described by Pascal's principle. In simple terms, pressure within a fluid spreads evenly throughout the liquid. If a force presses on one part of the water, that force distributes itself across every surface within it. As a result, organisms living deep in the ocean experience pressure from all directions simultaneously, rather than being squeezed from a single side. Even so, the environment remains extraordinarily demanding. Materials that function easily at the surface may behave very differently when subjected to pressures found thousands of meters below. Metals can deform, glass can fracture, and ordinary equipment may collapse almost instantly unless specially designed to resist the crushing forces of the deep sea. Understanding how matter behaves under extreme pressure became an important scientific question during the 20th century. One of the most influential figures in this field was the American physicist Percy Bridgman. Percy Bridgman devoted much of his career to studying the behavior of materials under intense pressure. Working at Harvard University during the early 20th century, he designed experimental devices capable of generating pressures far beyond those found in everyday environments. Using these instruments, he examined how solids, liquids, and gases responded when subjected to extreme compression. Bridgman's experiments reveal that pressure can dramatically alter the structure of matter. Certain materials change their crystal structures when compressed, rearranging their atoms into new configurations. Others undergo phase transitions, shifting from one physical state into another when the surrounding pressure reaches a critical level. For this pioneering research into high-pressure physics, Percy Bridgman was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in the year 1946. His work laid the foundation for modern pressure science, influencing fields ranging from materials engineering to planetary geology. In the decades that followed, scientists continued exploring how matter behaves under extreme conditions. Among those contributing to this effort is the mineral physicist Hokwang Mao, whose work has helped illuminate how minerals respond to the immense pressures found deep inside Earth. Hokwang Mao became widely known for his work with the diamond anvil cell, a device capable of generating enormous pressures within a laboratory setting. In this instrument, two small diamonds press against a tiny sample of material, compressing it with extraordinary force. Because diamonds are extremely strong and transparent, researchers can observe how the sample behaves while it is being compressed. Using this method, Hokwang Mao and his colleagues have studied the behavior of minerals that exist deep within Earth's mantle and core. These experiments help scientists understand how rocks transform under the intense pressures present thousands of kilometers beneath the surface. The same physical principles apply in a smaller but still dramatic way within the deep ocean. At depths exceeding 10,000 meters, pressure alters the behavior of molecules in ways that influence chemistry, biology, and fluid dynamics. Under such compression, molecules are pushed closer together. The distances between atoms shrink slightly, changing how chemical bonds behave. Certain reactions proceed more slowly, while others may become easier to trigger. Proteins within living cells can shift their shapes, altering their biological function. Fluids also behave differently under extreme pressure. Water becomes slightly denser as depth increases, and its physical properties shift in subtle ways. Viscosity, the measure of how easily a fluid flows, can change under pressure. Dissolved gases become more soluble, meaning gases that might escape into the atmosphere near the surface remain trapped within deep ocean water. These changes create a unique physical environment. Organisms that inhabit the deepest parts of the ocean must adapt their biological chemistry to function under conditions that would disrupt the molecular processes of most surface life. Even the simplest biological structures must adjust. Cell membranes, which form the protective boundaries of living cells, rely on carefully balanced molecular interactions. Under extreme pressure, those interactions can be altered, potentially causing membranes to become too rigid or too fragile. Deep-sea organisms therefore evolve specialized molecules that maintain stability despite the surrounding pressure. From a scientific perspective, the deep ocean offers something extraordinary. It provides a natural laboratory where matter experiences pressures difficult to reproduce on the surface of the planet. Instead of generating such conditions artificially within laboratories, researchers can observe them directly within Earth's own environment. Ocean trenches like the Mariana Trench therefore serve not only as geographical extremes, but also as physical experiments unfolding on a planetary scale. Every object resting at those depths exists under conditions that test the limits of materials science and biological chemistry. Submersibles descending toward the seafloor must be constructed with exceptional care. Their hulls are often built from thick titanium alloys or reinforced steel spheres designed to resist enormous compressive forces. Windows, if present at all, are made from specially engineered materials capable of surviving the surrounding pressure without fracturing. Even with these precautions, deep-sea exploration remains technically challenging. A small structural weakness can allow the surrounding water to collapse inward with devastating speed. Engineers therefore design these vessels with extreme safety margins, ensuring that the hull remains intact even under pressures exceeding those expected at the deepest trenches. For scientists, these extreme environments offer more than a technical challenge. They provide insight into how matter behaves when subjected to forces far beyond everyday experience. Studying these conditions helps researchers understand processes occurring not only in the deep ocean, but also deep within planets themselves. The same physics governing pressure at the bottom of the Mariana Trench also operates within the interiors of rocky planets, icy moons, and even the dense cores of distant worlds. By examining how materials respond under such compression, scientists gain clues about the structure of planetary interiors throughout the universe. Deep beneath the ocean surface, where darkness and pressure dominate, the laws of physics reveal themselves with remarkable clarity. The immense weight of the ocean presses quietly downward, shaping the behavior of molecules, minerals, and living organisms alike. In that silent environment, the ocean becomes more than a body of water. It becomes a vast natural experiment, demonstrating how matter responds when the forces of gravity and pressure reach their most extreme expression on the surface of Earth. At the surface of the ocean, sunlight pours down through the water with remarkable brightness. Waves scatter the light into shifting patterns, and the upper layers of the sea shimmer with movement and colour. For many creatures living near the surface, this world is filled with visual signals. Shapes can be seen clearly. Colours carry meaning. The entire environment is defined by light. But water absorbs sunlight surprisingly quickly. As sunlight enters the ocean, its energy begins to fade almost immediately. Molecules of water and tiny suspended particles scatter and absorb the incoming light. Each metre of descent removes a little more brightness from the surrounding water. The transformation happens gradually at first, but the effect becomes dramatic with depth. Within roughly the first 200 metres of the ocean, most of the visible light from the sun has already vanished. Red wavelengths disappear first, followed by orange and yellow. Blue light penetrates slightly farther because its shorter wavelength scatters differently in water, but eventually even that faint blue glow fades away. Beyond a certain depth, the ocean enters a region where sunlight can no longer support photosynthesis. Marine scientists often describe this boundary as the lower edge of the photic zone, the layer of ocean where sunlight remains strong enough to power the biological process that plants and microscopic algae use to convert light into chemical energy. Below that boundary begins a world defined by dimness and shadow. Oceanographers divide the deep ocean into several distinct vertical zones, each defined by depth and environmental conditions. The first of these deeper regions is called the Mesopelagic zone. The name comes from Greek roots meaning Middle Ocean. This zone typically extends from about 200 meters down to roughly 1,000 meters. The Mesopelagic zone is sometimes called the Twilight Zone. Sunlight still reaches this region, but only faintly. The illumination is so weak that photosynthesis can no longer occur. To human eyes, the water would appear dim and shadowy, more like perpetual dusk than daylight. Descend farther, and the remaining light disappears entirely. The Bathypelagic zone begins around 1,000 meters below the surface and continues downward for several kilometers. In this region, the ocean exists in complete darkness. No sunlight penetrates here at all. Day and night lose their meaning because the environment remains permanently black. Even deeper lies the abyssal zone, which covers the vast plains of the deep sea floor at depths between roughly 4,000 and 6,000 meters. The word abyss comes from ancient Greek language describing something immeasurably deep, a fitting description for a landscape so distant from sunlight that it might as well belong to another planet. Finally, at the deepest points of ocean trenches, the environment enters the Hadal zone. Named after Hades from Greek mythology, this zone includes the deepest trenches such as the Mariana Trench. Depths here may exceed 10 kilometers beneath the surface, placing them among the most extreme environments on Earth. Across all of these regions, one feature dominates the landscape: darkness. Without sunlight, the deep ocean becomes a place where visual perception operates very differently from the world above. Organisms cannot rely on bright colors or clear silhouettes to communicate, hunt, or avoid danger. Instead, life in the deep ocean has evolved remarkable adaptations that make use of whatever sensory information remains available. Some animals develop extremely large eyes capable of detecting the faintest traces of light drifting down from above. Others abandon vision almost entirely, relying instead on chemical sensing, vibration detection, or delicate pressure receptors that can perceive movement in the surrounding water. And then there are those organisms that create their own light. Bioluminescence is one of the most extraordinary adaptations found in the deep ocean. Through specialized chemical reactions inside their bodies, certain organisms can produce visible light even in complete darkness. This glow may appear as small flashes, gentle pulses, or steady luminous patterns depending on the species. Marine biologist Edith Widder has spent much of her career studying these glowing creatures. Through her research and deep-sea expeditions, she has documented a remarkable variety of bioluminescent organisms inhabiting the ocean's darker regions. The chemistry behind bioluminescence involves molecules called luciferins, interacting with enzymes known as luciferases. When these molecules react with oxygen, energy is released in the form of visible light. Unlike the light produced by a flame or incandescent bulb, this reaction generates very little heat. For that reason, bioluminescence is sometimes called cold light. Deep-sea animals use this ability in many different ways. Some species produce flashes of light to startle predators, creating a sudden burst of brightness that distracts the attacker long enough for escape. Others use glowing organs to lure prey closer, a strategy famously employed by certain anglerfish, whose bioluminescent lure hangs like a tiny lantern in front of their jaws. In other cases, bioluminescence acts as a form of camouflage. Certain fish produce light along their undersides that matches the faint glow of light filtering down from above. This technique, known as counter-illumination, makes them harder to see from below by predators looking upward. All of these strategies exist because darkness has removed sunlight as the primary driver of life in the deep ocean. At the surface, photosynthesis forms the foundation of nearly every marine ecosystem. Microscopic phytoplankton capture sunlight and convert it into chemical energy. That energy then moves upward through the food web as larger organisms consume smaller ones. In the deep ocean, however, sunlight never arrives. Without photosynthesis, energy must come from somewhere else. Much of that energy begins its journey far above, near the surface where sunlight still shines. Tiny fragments of organic material constantly drift downward through the water column. Dead plankton, fragments of seaweed, waste particles from fish, and other biological debris slowly sink toward the seafloor. Oceanographers sometimes describe this steady downward drift as marine snow. Although each individual particle may be extremely small, together they form a continuous rain of organic material falling through the ocean's depths. For creatures living thousands of meters below the surface, marine snow provides a crucial source of nourishment. The particles eventually settle on the seafloor where they become food for a wide variety of deep-sea organisms, from microscopic bacteria to larger animals wandering across the sediment. This constant downward transport of organic matter links the deep ocean to the sunlit waters above. Even though the deepest regions exist in complete darkness, they remain connected to surface ecosystems through the slow movement of energy and nutrients. In some areas, additional energy sources appear in the form of hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, where chemicals from Earth's interior enter the ocean. But across most of the deep sea floor, life depends largely on material imported from distant environments. The result is a biological system shaped by scarcity and patience. Food arrives slowly. Growth often occurs gradually. Many deep-sea organisms live far longer than their relatives near the surface, surviving in a world where energy must be used carefully. Far below the waves, where sunlight never reaches and darkness becomes permanent, life continues quietly in remarkable forms. The deep ocean may appear empty at first glance, but within that darkness an intricate ecosystem unfolds, sustained by faint glimmers of light, drifting particles of food, and the quiet persistence of living systems adapted to a world without the sun. Far below the already dark waters of the deep ocean lies a region so remote that it has earned a name borrowed from ancient mythology. Scientists call this environment the Hadal Zone. The word comes from Hades, the underworld of Greek mythology, and in many ways the comparison feels appropriate. The Hadal Zone marks the deepest ecological region of the ocean, found primarily within long, narrow trenches that slice downward through the seafloor. These trenches appear where tectonic plates bend and descend into Earth's interior. The Mariana Trench is the most famous of them, but it is not alone. Similar Hadal trenches exist across the Pacific Ocean, including the Tonga Trench, the Kermadec Trench, and the Philippine Trench. Each forms a steep-sided valley reaching far deeper than the surrounding seafloor. The Hadal Zone typically begins at depths greater than 6,000 meters and extends downward to the deepest parts of these trenches. At such depths, the pressure becomes extraordinary. Temperatures hover just above freezing, and sunlight has long since vanished. Yet even here, life has managed to take hold. For many years, scientists assumed that the deepest trenches might contain very little biological activity. The combination of crushing pressure and scarce food seemed likely to limit the number of organisms capable of surviving there. But research conducted during the past few decades has revealed that these deep valleys support surprisingly active ecosystems. One of the researchers who has helped illuminate this hidden world is the marine biologist Alan Jameson. Through numerous deep-sea expeditions, Alan Jameson and his colleagues have deployed specially designed landers and cameras into Hadal trenches around the Pacific Ocean. These instruments descend slowly through kilometers of water before settling on the seafloor, where they record images and collect data from environments rarely seen by human eyes. The footage gathered during these missions has revealed animals quietly moving across the trench floor. Among the most remarkable are the Hadal snailfish. These small pale fish inhabit depths that would crush most other vertebrates. Their bodies appear delicate and almost translucent, yet they swim calmly across sediments nearly 7 miles beneath the surface of the ocean. The snailfish belongs to a family known as Liparidae, a group of fishes adapted to cold and deep environments. In the Hadal Zone, however, their adaptations reach an extreme level. The skeleton of the Hadal snailfish is lightly built, reducing the rigid structures that might fail under pressure. Its tissues contain specialized molecules that help proteins maintain their shape despite the immense compression surrounding them. Another common inhabitant of Hadal trenches is the amphipod. Amphipods are small crustaceans related to shrimp, although many species appear more like tiny sideways swimming insects than typical shellfish. In the trenches, they gather in large numbers, scavenging organic material that settles onto the seafloor. Some amphipods discovered in Hadal environments grow larger than their shallow water relatives, a phenomenon sometimes called deep-sea gigantism. These creatures roam slowly across the sediment, searching for food particles carried downward from the ocean above. Living in the Hadal Zone requires a careful balance of biological strategies. The pressure alone poses enormous challenges for cellular chemistry. Proteins must remain stable, membranes must stay flexible, and metabolic processes must continue even under conditions that would disrupt the physiology of most animals. At the same time, food remains scarce. Unlike the sunlit ocean surface where energy arrives continuously through photosynthesis, the Hadal zone receives nourishment only indirectly. Organic material drifts downward from surface waters, carried through the water column as part of the slow-falling rain known as marine snow. Because this supply arrives gradually and irregularly, deep-sea ecosystems operate with a limited energy budget. Animals cannot afford to waste resources on rapid growth or constant activity. Many organisms move slowly and conserve energy whenever possible. This slow pace creates food webs that are delicate and finely balanced. If the flow of organic material from the surface decreases, the impact can ripple through the entire ecosystem. Each organism depends on a chain of energy transfers that ultimately begins far above in the sunlit layers of the ocean. Interestingly, the very shape of ocean trenches may help concentrate some of this drifting material. As organic particles sink through the water column, they do not always fall perfectly straight downward. Ocean currents can push them sideways, and the complex topography of the seafloor can influence where they eventually settle. Because trenches form steep-sided valleys, they sometimes act as natural collection points for this sinking debris. Sediments and organic particles sliding down the trench walls gradually accumulate along the bottom. In this sense, the trenches function as ecological traps, gathering food resources that might otherwise disperse across the broader seafloor. For the organisms living there, this accumulation provides an important advantage. Although the supply remains limited, the trench floor may receive slightly more organic material than surrounding abyssal plains. Amphipods, snailfish, and other Hadal residents take advantage of this steady trickle of nutrients. The environment still demands patience. Meals may arrive only occasionally, and the organisms must endure long intervals between feeding opportunities. Many deep-sea animals possess slow metabolic rates that allow them to survive on minimal energy intake. Life in the Hadal zone is less about abundance and more about endurance. Despite these constraints, the trenches host communities that appear surprisingly resilient. Cameras placed on the seafloor often record animals arriving quickly when bait is introduced, suggesting that these organisms can detect chemical signals drifting through the water from considerable distances. The Hadal zone therefore reveals an ecosystem shaped by extremes. Pressure presses inward from every direction. Darkness removes sunlight entirely. Food arrives slowly, falling through kilometers of ocean before reaching the seafloor. Yet within these conditions, life continues. Tiny amphipods search through sediment for drifting nutrients. Pale snailfish glide gently across the trench floor. Microbial communities within the mud process organic material one molecule at a time. The pace of life may be slow, but the ecosystem remains active. In these remote valleys beneath the sea, the planet demonstrates once again that biology has a remarkable ability to adapt. Even in the deepest corners of Earth's oceans, where pressure climbs to astonishing levels and sunlight never reaches, living systems persist quietly within the darkness. When imagining life in the deep ocean, it is easy to picture the creatures moving across the seafloor or drifting slowly through the water above it. Snailfish glide across trench sediments, amphipods search for falling fragments of organic material, and other strange animals patrol the quiet darkness. Yet these visible organisms represent only a small portion of the life hidden in the deepest parts of the planet. Beneath the seafloor itself lies another world entirely. Below the layers of mud and sediment, and even within the solid rock of Earth's crust, exists an enormous microbial ecosystem known as the deep biosphere. Unlike the visible life inhabiting the trenches, these organisms are microscopic. They live in places where no sunlight reaches, where oxygen is scarce, and where energy arrives only in tiny chemical traces. For many years, scientists suspected that microbes might exist within deep sediments, but the scale of this hidden ecosystem remained uncertain. The challenge was not only detecting the organisms, but reaching them in the first place. Much of the deep biosphere lies hundreds of meters, and sometimes kilometers, beneath the seafloor. Accessing these environments requires drilling technology capable of penetrating layers of sediment and rock beneath thousands of meters of ocean water. One of the scientific programs that made such exploration possible is the Integrated Ocean Drilling Program, an international research initiative that brings together scientists, engineers, and research vessels from many countries. Using specialized drilling ships, this program extracts long, cylindrical cores of sediment and rock from deep beneath the ocean floor. Each core acts like a timeline of Earth's geological history, preserving layers that formed over millions of years. Among the researchers studying these cores is microbiologist Fumio Inagaki, whose work has helped reveal the remarkable scale of life hidden beneath the seabed. Through careful analysis of sediment samples obtained during deep drilling expeditions, Fumio Inagaki and his colleagues discovered that microbial communities extend far deeper into the Earth's crust than scientists once believed. These microorganisms inhabit tiny pores within sediments and microscopic fractures in rock. In some cases, they live hundreds of meters below the seafloor. In other locations, they persist more than a kilometer beneath the ocean bottom. Even at these depths, far removed from sunlight and surface ecosystems, microbial life continues quietly. The environment in which these microbes exist would seem hostile by most standards. Temperatures can rise steadily with depth, as heat from Earth's interior conducts upward through the crust. Oxygen may be completely absent. Nutrients arrive slowly, often through chemical reactions between water and surrounding minerals, rather than through organic matter falling from above. Yet microbial life has adapted to these conditions with remarkable persistence. Many of these organisms derive energy from chemical reactions involving hydrogen, methane, sulfur, or iron. Instead of relying on sunlight, they exploit the chemical energy stored within Earth's crust itself. This form of metabolism allows microbes to survive in places once considered entirely sterile. Some organisms extract energy by oxidizing hydrogen, released during reactions between seawater and mineral surfaces. Others use sulfate or carbon dioxide as part of metabolic pathways that generate small but sufficient amounts of chemical energy. These metabolic strategies operate on extremely slow timescales. Unlike microbes living near the ocean surface, which may reproduce rapidly when nutrients are abundant, deep biosphere microorganisms often grow at astonishingly slow rates. In some environments, a single microbial cell may divide only once every several years or even decades. Such slow growth reflects the limited availability of energy. In the deep biosphere, nutrients arrive gradually and unpredictably. Rather than pursuing rapid expansion, these organisms maintain stable populations that persist over long periods with minimal metabolic activity. Despite their slow pace, the combined population of these microbes is immense. When scientists began estimating the total biomass contained within the deep biosphere, the results were surprising. Some studies suggest that microorganisms living beneath the seafloor may represent a substantial fraction of Earth's total microbial life. Although precise estimates remain uncertain, research published through international collaborations indicates that the deep biosphere may contain billions of microbial cells. When considered collectively, this hidden ecosystem rivals some of the largest biological systems on the planet. The discovery of such a vast subterranean community has reshaped scientific understanding of the boundaries of life. For much of the 20th century, biologists assumed that life depended primarily on sunlight and surface ecosystems. Plants and algae captured solar energy through photosynthesis, and nearly all other organisms relied on those primary producers either directly or indirectly. The deep biosphere demonstrates that life can persist even when sunlight is completely absent. Chemical reactions within Earth's crust provide an alternative source of energy, capable of sustaining microbial ecosystems over geological timescales. This realization has influenced several scientific fields beyond microbiology. Geologists studying the chemistry of ocean sediments now consider the role of microbes in shaping mineral transformations deep beneath the seafloor. Astrobiologists searching for life beyond Earth have also taken notice. If microorganisms can survive kilometers beneath Earth's surface using chemical energy alone, similar ecosystems might exist on other worlds. Beneath the frozen crusts of distant moons or deep underground within planetary rocks, microbial life could potentially persist without direct access to sunlight. The deep biosphere therefore expands the known range of environments capable of supporting life. It reveals that biology is not confined to the familiar landscapes of forests, oceans, and grasslands. Instead, living systems may inhabit hidden niches deep within planetary interiors. Even on Earth, this discovery has transformed how scientists view the planet itself. The surface world that humans inhabit represents only one layer of a far larger biological system. Beneath the ocean floor lies a quiet microbial domain, operating on timescales far longer than those experienced at the surface. Within that subterranean environment, chemical reactions unfold slowly. Microbial cells persist in tiny fractures and pores, metabolizing minute amounts of energy extracted from surrounding minerals. Generations pass not over days or months but over decades and centuries. Far below the deep ocean trenches, where pressure is immense and sunlight vanished long ago, life continues in its simplest and most persistent form. Hidden within the sediments and rocks beneath the seabed, the deep biosphere quietly reminds us that the boundaries of life extend far deeper into the earth than anyone once imagined. Far beneath the ocean's surface, where pressure rises to levels rarely experienced anywhere else on Earth, life must solve a quiet but profound challenge. Every living cell depends on a delicate balance of molecular interactions. Proteins must fold into precise shapes. Enzymes must carry out chemical reactions at just the right speed. Cell membranes must remain flexible enough to function while still holding the internal contents of the cell together. In the deep ocean, all of these processes occur under conditions that would disrupt the biology of most surface organisms. Pressure changes the physical environment surrounding every molecule. When water presses inward from every direction, atoms are pushed slightly closer together. This compression may seem small on the scale of individual molecules, but even tiny shifts can influence how biological structures behave. Proteins, for example, rely on complex three-dimensional folding patterns to perform their functions. Each protein begins as a long chain of amino acids that twists and folds into a particular shape. That shape determines what the protein does. Some proteins act as structural components inside cells. Others function as enzymes, speeding up chemical reactions that would otherwise proceed too slowly to sustain life. These enzymes allow cells to carry out metabolism, produce energy, and repair damaged molecules. Their ability to function depends heavily on the precise arrangement of atoms within their folded structure. Under extreme pressure, however, that arrangement can change. Compression may alter the forces holding a protein together. Certain internal cavities within the molecule may collapse. Weak interactions between amino acids may shift, subtly reshaping the structure of the protein. When this happens, the protein may lose its ability to function correctly. For organisms living at the surface of the ocean, these effects would be devastating. Many proteins adapted to low-pressure environments become unstable when exposed to the crushing conditions of the deep sea. Yet life in the deepest parts of the ocean continues to operate normally. This resilience comes from a remarkable set of biochemical adaptations that allow certain organisms to function comfortably under extreme pressure. Scientists describe organisms that thrive in high-pressure environments as piezophiles. The word comes from Greek roots meaning pressure-loving. These organisms do not merely tolerate high pressure, they require it. Some species grow poorly, or even fail to survive when brought to the low-pressure conditions found at the surface. The study of piezophiles has revealed much about how life adjusts to extreme environments. Among the researchers who have made significant contributions to this field is microbiologist Douglas Bartlett. Through decades of laboratory research and deep-sea exploration, Douglas Bartlett has investigated how pressure influences microbial physiology and genetics. Working with pressure-resistant microorganisms collected from deep ocean sediments and trenches, Bartlett and his colleagues have shown that many piezophiles possess specialized versions of common cellular proteins. These modified proteins remain stable even when surrounded by pressures exceeding hundreds or thousands of atmospheres. One strategy involves subtle changes in the amino acid sequences that form the protein chain. By replacing certain amino acids with others, the overall structure of the protein becomes more resistant to compression. These modifications help maintain the precise folding pattern required for proper function. Another important factor involves the chemical environment surrounding the proteins. Many deep-sea organisms produce small protective molecules known as osmolytes. These molecules interact with proteins in ways that help stabilize their structure under pressure. One well-known example is trimethylamine N oxide, a compound that appears in particularly high concentrations in the tissues of deep-dwelling fish. Trimethylamine N oxide acts almost like a molecular brace. It strengthens the interactions holding proteins together, helping them retain their shape even when external pressure attempts to distort them. Interestingly, the concentration of this compound tends to increase with the depth at which certain fish species live. The deeper the habitat, the greater the concentration required to maintain protein stability. Cell membranes face a similar challenge in high-pressure environments. The membrane surrounding each cell is composed primarily of lipid molecules arranged in a thin, flexible layer. This structure must remain fluid enough to allow nutrients to enter and waste products to exit. If the membrane becomes too rigid, essential molecules cannot move through it efficiently. Pressure tends to compress lipid molecules, making membranes less flexible. Deep-sea organisms respond by adjusting the chemical composition of their membrane lipids. Many piezophiles incorporate fatty acids with particular structural properties that prevent the membrane from becoming overly stiff under pressure. These modifications allow the membrane to remain fluid even in environments where external forces are intense. Some microbes also regulate the thickness of their membranes or alter the proportion of different lipid molecules within the membrane layer. These adjustments help maintain the correct physical properties needed for normal cellular function. The remarkable part of this story is that all of these molecular adjustments occur through the process of evolution. Over many generations, organisms inhabiting high-pressure environments gradually acquire genetic changes that favor stability under compression. Natural selection preserves the variants best suited to life in the deep ocean. What emerges from this process is a form of biology finely tuned to conditions that would overwhelm most other life forms. Proteins remain folded correctly. Enzymes continue performing their catalytic tasks. Membranes maintain their delicate balance between flexibility and strength. The deep ocean therefore reveals an entirely different branch of biochemical adaptation. It is not merely a place where familiar organisms survive under difficult conditions. Instead, it represents a distinct biochemical frontier where molecular systems have evolved to operate in ways rarely encountered at the surface of the planet. For scientists studying the limits of life, these adaptations are deeply fascinating. They demonstrate that biological systems are capable of functioning across an astonishing range of physical conditions. Pressure that might collapse a submarine hull can become an ordinary part of daily life for microorganisms and deep-sea animals. Research into piezophiles also provides insight into possible life beyond Earth. If organisms can thrive under extreme pressure in the depths of our own oceans, similar biochemical strategies might allow life to survive within subsurface oceans on distant moons. Worlds such as Europa or Enceladus may host deep oceans beneath thick layers of ice where pressure reaches comparable levels. By studying how proteins fold, how membranes adapt, and how metabolic pathways function under compression, scientists gain clues about the broader potential of biology throughout the universe. Far beneath the waves, in the quiet darkness of the deep ocean, life continues to refine its molecular machinery. Proteins fold with precision, enzymes guide chemical reactions, and membranes maintain the boundaries that separate living cells from the surrounding water. All of this unfolds under pressures so great that the very behavior of matter begins to change. Yet biology adjusts, adapts, and persists, quietly expanding the boundaries of what life can achieve in the most extreme corners of the planet. For most of human history, the deepest parts of the ocean existed only as numbers on charts and mysterious shapes hinted at by sonar echoes. Scientists knew that enormous trenches cut into the seafloor, and they could estimate their depth with growing accuracy. But actually visiting those places remained far beyond the reach of ordinary vessels. The pressure alone seemed almost impossible to confront. Yet in the middle of the 20th century, two explorers would attempt something extraordinary. Their destination was the deepest known point in the world's oceans, a location within the Mariana Trench known as Challenger Deep. Reaching that place required a vessel capable of surviving pressures more than 1,000 times greater than those at the ocean's surface. It also required a willingness to descend into an environment that no human had ever experienced directly. The craft designed for this mission was called the Bathyscaphe Trieste. The word bathyscaphe comes from Greek roots meaning deep vessel. Unlike ordinary submarines which rely on engines and propulsion to move through the water, a bathyscaphe is designed primarily to descend vertically into extreme depths. Its structure resembles a floating balloon attached to a small pressure-resistant cabin. The Trieste had originally been developed by the Swiss physicist and engineer Auguste Piccard, who had long been fascinated by exploring extreme environments. Auguste Piccard had previously become famous for pioneering high-altitude balloon flights into the stratosphere. Later in his career, he turned his attention downward toward the unexplored depths of the ocean. His son, Jacques Piccard, inherited that same curiosity. Working alongside engineers and researchers, Jacques Piccard helped refine the design of the bathyscaphe. Eventually, the vessel was acquired and further modified by the United States Navy, which saw its potential for scientific exploration of the deep sea. The trees consisted of two main components. Above was a large float filled with gasoline. Although gasoline might seem an unusual choice, it has a useful property for deep-sea exploration. It is less dense than water and only slightly compressible under pressure. This allowed the float to provide buoyancy even when surrounded by enormous water pressure. Suspended beneath the float was a small spherical pressure cabin made from thick steel. This sphere served as the living compartment for the crew during the descent. Its shape was carefully chosen because a sphere distributes pressure evenly across its surface, making it one of the strongest forms for resisting external compression. Inside this sphere, 2 explorers prepared for one of the most remarkable journeys ever attempted beneath the sea. One was Jacques Piccard, continuing his father's legacy of exploration. The other was Lieutenant Don Walsh of the United States Navy, a young officer trained in submarine operations. On the morning of their historic dive in January of 1960, the Trieste was positioned above the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific Ocean. The vessel began its descent slowly, releasing small amounts of ballast to allow gravity to pull it downward into the depths. As the bathyscaphe sank deeper into the ocean, sunlight faded away and darkness surrounded the vessel. The water outside grew steadily colder, and the pressure increased with every passing meter. The descent continued for nearly 5 hours as the Trieste travelled downward through more than 10 kilometres of ocean. Inside the pressure sphere, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh watched their instruments carefully. The thick steel walls around them measured several inches in thickness, designed specifically to withstand the crushing forces outside. Even so, the situation required absolute trust in the engineering of the vessel. At one point during the descent, a loud cracking sound echoed through the cabin when an outer window shield fractured under pressure. The protective shield was not essential to the integrity of the pressure sphere itself, but the sound served as a reminder of the immense forces surrounding them. Despite the moment of tension, the vessel continued its slow descent. Eventually, the instruments indicated that the bathyscaphe had reached the seafloor of Challenger Deep. The Trieste settled gently into the sediment at a depth of nearly 11 kilometres beneath the ocean surface. For the first time in history, human beings had arrived at the deepest known location on Earth. Outside the small observation window, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh saw a quiet landscape of pale sediment stretching into darkness. The water around them was slightly clouded by particles stirred up as the vessel touched the bottom. Visibility was limited, yet they were able to observe the seafloor directly. One of the most surprising observations came when they reported seeing small organisms moving near the bottom. Although details remained debated, the explorers believed they saw fish or fish-like creatures inhabiting the trench floor. Whether the observation involved a true fish species or another form of deep-sea organism, the moment reinforced an important scientific idea. Even at the deepest point in the ocean, life could exist. The Trieste remained on the seafloor for roughly 20 minutes before beginning its ascent. By releasing iron ballast, the vessel regained buoyancy and slowly rose toward the surface. The return journey lasted several hours as the bathyscaphe climbed through the water column back toward daylight. When Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh finally emerged from the vessel, they had accomplished something unprecedented. They had demonstrated that humans could travel safely to the deepest known region of the ocean and return. The scientific importance of this descent extended far beyond the experience itself. It confirmed that the deepest trenches were accessible with the right engineering and careful planning. It also provided valuable data about pressure conditions, seafloor sediments, and the potential for life at extreme depths. Equally important was the psychological impact of the mission. Until that moment, the deepest ocean trenches had existed mostly as distant measurements recorded by instruments. After the Trieste dive, those places became real locations that humans had visited, observed, and described firsthand. The expedition helped inspire future generations of oceanographers, engineers, and explorers. It demonstrated that even the most extreme environments on Earth could be studied through a combination of scientific curiosity and thoughtful design. In the decades that followed, advances in submersible technology would allow additional expeditions into deep ocean trenches. Robotic vehicles and modern deep-diving submersibles would continue exploring regions once considered unreachable. Yet the descent of the bathyscaphe Trieste remains a defining moment in the history of ocean exploration. Two individuals sitting inside a small steel sphere travelled deeper into the ocean than anyone before them, reaching a silent landscape nearly 11 kilometres below the waves. In that quiet place, at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deep ocean revealed itself not as an abstract concept but as a real environment, waiting patiently beneath the surface of the sea. The deepest regions of the ocean were once visited only rarely, reached by a handful of daring expeditions and a small number of specialized vessels. In the decades since the historic descent of the bathyscaphus Trieste, however, technological progress has gradually transformed how scientists explore these remote environments. The Hadal Trenches, once thought nearly inaccessible, are now studied with an expanding fleet of submersibles, robotic vehicles, and deep ocean research programs. Modern trench exploration relies on a combination of human-occupied submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. Each type of craft serves a different role. Human-occupied submersibles allow researchers to directly observe the seafloor through thick viewing windows while conducting experiments or collecting samples. Remotely operated vehicles, sometimes called ROVs, remain connected to research ships by long cables and are controlled from the surface using cameras, robotic arms, and advanced sensors. A third type of system, known as an autonomous underwater vehicle, operates without a cable connection at all. These robotic explorers are programmed before deployment and travel through the ocean independently, collecting data and mapping the seafloor before returning to the surface. Together, these technologies have dramatically expanded the reach of modern oceanography. One of the most widely known deep ocean expeditions of the 21st century was led by filmmaker and explorer James Cameron. Although James Cameron is widely recognized for directing films, he has also developed a deep interest in ocean exploration. In the early years of the 21st century, he assembled a team of engineers, oceanographers, and researchers to design a new deep-diving submersible capable of reaching the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The resulting vessel was called Deep Sea Challenger. Unlike the bathyscaphe Trieste, which relied on a large gasoline float for buoyancy, Deep Sea Challenger was designed as a vertically oriented submersible built primarily from advanced materials and syntactic foam. Syntactic foam is a special type of buoyant material composed of tiny hollow glass spheres embedded within a rigid matrix. These microscopic spheres allow the material to remain buoyant while resisting compression under extreme pressure. In March of 2012, James Cameron piloted Deep Sea Challenger on a solo descent to Challenger Deep. The dive carried him nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. During the expedition, the submersible collected high-resolution video footage, sediment samples, and biological material from the trench floor. One important feature of the Deep Sea Challenger mission was its advanced imaging system. The submersible carried powerful lights and specially designed cameras capable of capturing detailed images even in the complete darkness of the Hadal environment. These observations helped reveal features of the seafloor that had rarely been seen directly by human eyes. Modern exploration of the deepest oceans did not stop there. In the years following the Deep Sea Challenger expedition, another remarkable effort expanded deep ocean exploration across the entire planet. This mission was known as the Five Deeps Expedition and was led by American oceanographer and explorer Victor Vescovo. Victor Vescovo set out with an ambitious goal. Rather than visiting a single trench, he aimed to reach the deepest point in each of the 5 major oceans. Achieving this objective required a new generation of deep-diving submersible capable of repeated descents to Hadal depths. The vessel developed for the expedition was named Limiting Factor. This submersible was constructed using a titanium pressure sphere designed to withstand the immense forces present at extreme depths. Titanium offered an important advantage because it provides exceptional strength while remaining lighter than many other metals capable of resisting such pressure. Beginning in 2018, Victor Vescovo and his research team launched a series of expeditions that reached the deepest known locations in the Atlantic Ocean, the Southern Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean. During these dives, the team documented deep sea life, mapped seafloor structures, and collected geological samples. One particularly striking outcome of these missions was the discovery that even the deepest trenches are not empty landscapes. High-resolution cameras and sampling equipment revealed diverse communities of organisms living in these environments. Amphipods, snailfish, sea cucumbers, and a variety of microbial life forms inhabit the sediment layers and rocky slopes of the trench walls. Imaging technology has played a crucial role in these discoveries. Modern submersibles carry advanced camera systems capable of operating in extremely low light conditions. Powerful light-emitting systems illuminate the seafloor while sensitive cameras capture images of organisms that may be encountering human observers for the first time. These observations help scientists understand how life adapts to the harsh conditions of the Hadal zone. Researchers can examine body shapes, movement patterns, and ecological relationships between species living at extreme depths. Samples brought to the surface allow laboratory studies of genetics, metabolism, and biochemical adaptation. Beyond individual expeditions, international research programs now collaborate to explore the deepest parts of the ocean. One example is the International Hadal Ecosystem Studies Program, often abbreviated as HADES. This scientific initiative brings together researchers from multiple countries to study trench ecosystems, geological processes, and deep-sea biodiversity. Collaborative research efforts involve research vessels equipped with deep-diving vehicles, seafloor sensors, and sampling equipment capable of retrieving sediment cores from the trench floor. These studies help scientists understand how trenches influence ocean circulation, carbon cycling, and the distribution of marine life. Despite these technological advances, operating at Hadal depths remains extremely challenging. Pressure increases dramatically as vehicles descend through the ocean. At depths approaching 11 kilometers, the surrounding water presses inward with a force exceeding 1,000 times the pressure experienced at sea level. Any flaw in the structure of a submersible could lead to catastrophic failure. Engineers therefore design deep diving vehicles with extraordinary care. Pressure spheres must be machined with exceptional precision, often from titanium or specially treated steel. Electronic components require protective housings capable of surviving extreme compression. Even camera lenses and lighting systems must be engineered to function reliably under intense pressure. Communication also presents difficulties. Radio signals cannot travel effectively through seawater, especially at great depths. As a result, many deep-sea vehicles rely on acoustic communication systems that transmit information using sound waves. These systems allow operators on research ships to monitor the position and status of submersibles far below the surface. Another challenge involves navigation. Without sunlight or recognizable landmarks, orientation near the seafloor can be difficult. Scientists rely on sonar mapping, inertial navigation systems, and acoustic positioning networks to determine the location of submersibles operating within the trenches. Even with these obstacles, exploration continues to advance steadily. Each new expedition adds further detail to the scientific picture of the deep ocean. The Hadal trenches are gradually transforming from mysterious voids into carefully studied environments, filled with geological complexity and surprising biological diversity. The deepest ocean regions still hold many unanswered questions, yet modern technology has opened a doorway into these hidden landscapes. Through the combined efforts of engineers, oceanographers, and explorers, the Mariana Trench and other deep ocean trenches are revealing their secrets one descent at a time. Far below the rolling surface of the ocean lies a landscape that, at first glance, appears surprisingly simple. After descending past continental slopes and mountain chains hidden beneath the sea, the terrain often opens into vast stretches of remarkable flatness. These regions are known as abyssal plains, and they represent some of the largest and most quietly expansive environments on the planet. An abyssal plain is a broad region of the seafloor found at depths typically between about 3 and 6 kilometers beneath the ocean surface. Despite the dramatic geology that shapes many parts of the seafloor, abyssal plains appear almost featureless when viewed on large scales. They extend for thousands of kilometers across the ocean basins, forming immense underwater landscapes that rival the size of continents. The surprising smoothness of these regions is not the result of calm geological origins. In fact, the ocean floor beneath an abyssal plain often began as rough volcanic crust formed at mid-ocean ridges. Newly created seafloor is typically rugged and uneven, marked by ridges, fissures, and hardened flows of basaltic lava. Over time, however, something remarkable happens. A slow and steady rain of particles begins to soften that rough terrain. This process occurs through what oceanographers call sediment deposition. Tiny particles produced in the upper ocean gradually sink toward the seafloor, settling onto the landscape below. Over thousands and millions of years, these particles accumulate layer upon layer, filling in depressions and smoothing out the jagged features of the underlying rock. One of the most important sources of this material is known as marine snow. The name may sound poetic, but the phenomenon itself is very real. Marine snow consists of a gentle downward drift of organic debris from the upper layers of the ocean. Dead plankton, fragments of algae, microscopic shells, and tiny clumps of organic matter slowly fall through the water column, like delicate snowflakes drifting through a winter sky. As these particles descend, they form an almost continuous shower of material settling onto the deep ocean floor. The process is slow, often adding only a few millimeters of sediment over many centuries, yet given enough time, even such gradual accumulation can transform rugged volcanic terrain into remarkably smooth plains. In addition to organic debris, other microscopic particles contribute to abyssal sediments. Mineral dust carried by winds from distant continents may settle onto the ocean surface and eventually sink downward. Tiny shells produced by plankton made of calcium carbonate or silica also drift toward the depths after the organisms die. Together, these materials create a complex mixture of sediments that gradually bury the underlying seafloor. The resulting abyssal plains become some of the flattest regions anywhere on Earth. When surveyed using sonar mapping systems, certain abyssal plains appear smoother than many deserts or agricultural fields on land. Their enormous scale means that these quiet environments cover a large portion of the ocean basins. Yet despite their apparent emptiness, abyssal plains are far from lifeless. Life exists there, although it operates under conditions of extraordinary scarcity. Unlike shallow marine ecosystems, where sunlight fuels abundant plant growth through photosynthesis, abyssal environments lie far beyond the reach of sunlight. Energy must arrive indirectly from distant parts of the ocean. Marine snow provides the primary source of food for many organisms living on the abyssal floor. Each falling particle carries organic carbon, originally produced by photosynthetic organisms near the surface. By the time these particles reach the deep ocean, much of their energy has already been consumed by microbes and animals living in the water column above. What remains is a sparse but vital trickle of nutrients. Deep-sea ecologist Craig Smith has conducted extensive research on abyssal ecosystems, helping scientists understand how life persists under these limited conditions. Studies led by Craig Smith and his colleagues have revealed communities of animals that survive by carefully harvesting the scattered organic material arriving from above. Many abyssal organisms move slowly and conserve energy whenever possible. Sea cucumbers crawl gently across the sediment, collecting organic particles with specialized feeding tentacles. Worms burrow through the mud, processing sediment in search of microscopic food. Small crustaceans and brittle stars sift through the seabed, extracting nourishment from the thin layer of organic matter. The slow pace of life in these environments reflects the limited energy available. Growth rates can be extremely gradual, and some deep-sea organisms may live for decades or even centuries. In such places, patience becomes an evolutionary advantage. Occasionally, however, the abyssal plains experience brief moments of unexpected abundance. When a large animal, such as a whale, dies near the ocean surface, its body may sink through the water column and land on the seafloor. These events, known as whale falls, deliver an enormous burst of nutrients to the surrounding ecosystem. When such a carcass reaches the abyssal plain, it becomes the center of a temporary but vibrant community. Scavenging fish, crustaceans, and specialized microbes gather to feed on the sudden supply of organic material. Over time, the whale skeleton itself becomes home to unique microbial communities that can persist for years. Although whale falls are rare, they demonstrate how even the quietest environments can occasionally experience dramatic changes in resource availability. Beyond their biological significance, abyssal plains also serve as long-term archives of Earth's environmental history. Each thin layer of sediment settling onto the seafloor preserves microscopic evidence of conditions in the ocean and atmosphere above. Fossilized shells, mineral particles, and chemical signatures accumulate year after year, creating a geological record that extends back millions of years. Scientists recover this history by extracting sediment cores from the abyssal floor. A sediment core is a cylindrical column of seafloor material collected using specialized drilling equipment. By studying the layers within these cores, researchers can reconstruct past climates, changes in ocean circulation, and fluctuations in biological productivity. Some abyssal plains have remained relatively stable for astonishing lengths of time. Unlike continental regions shaped by erosion, mountain building, and shifting rivers, these deep ocean landscapes often change extremely slowly. Their quiet accumulation of sediments creates a continuous archive of planetary history. In this sense, the abyssal plains act almost like the memory of the ocean. Every drifting particle that settles onto their surface contributes to a record written gradually over geological time. Layer by layer, the deep sea stores information about ancient climates, extinct organisms, and long-vanished oceans. Far below the waves, beyond the reach of sunlight and far from the busy ecosystems of coastal waters, these immense plains stretch silently across the seafloor. At first glance they may appear empty and uneventful, yet within their sediments lies an extraordinary story of life, geology, and time unfolding slowly in the quiet darkness of the deep ocean. Beneath the quiet mud of the deep ocean floor lies another hidden world, one that extends far below the seabed itself. For many years, scientists assumed that life ended at the surface of the sediment, where animals burrowed through soft layers of mud in search of food. Yet as drilling technology improved and researchers began to sample deeper layers of ocean sediment and rock, an unexpected discovery began to emerge. Life was not confined to the surface of the seabed. Instead, it continued downward into the sediments and even into the rocky crust beneath the ocean floor. This hidden realm is often described as the subseafloor biosphere. It is an ecosystem unlike any other on Earth. Sunlight never reaches it. Temperatures may vary from near freezing to surprisingly warm depending on the depth and geological conditions. Nutrients are extremely scarce, and yet microbial life persists there in enormous numbers. Scientists investigating this environment have discovered that microorganisms inhabit tiny spaces between sediment grains, as well as fractures and pores within the basaltic rocks that make up much of the oceanic crust. These microscopic organisms form communities that exist kilometers beneath the ocean floor, living in conditions that once seemed far beyond the limits of life. One researcher, who has played an important role in uncovering this hidden biosphere, is geobiologist Katrina Edwards. Through years of work involving ocean drilling programs and laboratory analysis, Katrina Edwards and her colleagues helped demonstrate that microbial ecosystems exist deep within the rocky crust beneath the seafloor. Her research focused particularly on microorganisms living within cracks and pores in basalt, the dark volcanic rock that forms much of the oceanic crust. Although basalt appears solid on large scales, it contains networks of microscopic spaces created as lava cools and fractures. These spaces can hold water and dissolved chemicals, creating habitats where microbes may survive. Unlike organisms living near the ocean surface, these microbes cannot rely on sunlight for energy. Instead, they depend on chemical reactions involving the minerals surrounding them. This process is known as chemosynthesis. Chemosynthesis allows certain microorganisms to generate energy by transferring electrons between chemical compounds. In many subseafloor environments, hydrogen plays an important role in these reactions. Hydrogen gas can form when water interacts with certain minerals within the Earth's crust. Microorganisms may use this hydrogen as a source of energy, combining it with other compounds such as carbon dioxide to produce organic molecules. Sulfur-based reactions also support life in some deep environments. Certain microbes can oxidize hydrogen sulfide or other sulfur compounds, releasing energy that fuels their metabolism. Iron may serve a similar role. Some microorganisms obtain energy by transferring electrons between iron minerals in the surrounding rock. These chemical pathways may sound unusual when compared with the familiar processes of plants and animals, yet they represent a fundamental strategy for survival in environments where sunlight and organic nutrients are extremely limited. By tapping into the chemical energy stored in minerals, these microbes sustain ecosystems entirely independent of photosynthesis. Life in the subseafloor biosphere operates at a remarkably slow pace. In many cases, the availability of energy is so limited that microbial metabolism proceeds thousands of times more slowly than it does in surface environments. Cells may divide only rarely, sometimes taking years or even centuries to reproduce. Because activity occurs so gradually, these organisms may persist for astonishing lengths of time. Some researchers suggest that individual microbial communities within deep sediments could remain active for thousands or even millions of years without major disturbance. In this sense, the subseafloor biosphere resembles a living archive quietly enduring beneath the ocean floor. Another concept that has emerged from these discoveries is known as the deep carbon biosphere. This term refers to the enormous amount of carbon stored in microbial life inhabiting deep sediments and crustal rocks beneath the oceans and continents. For much of scientific history, estimates of Earth's total biomass focused primarily on organisms living at the surface of the planet. Forests, grasslands, plankton in the oceans, and animals on land all contributed to those calculations. The discovery of widespread microbial life beneath the seafloor forced scientists to reconsider those estimates. Studies conducted by international research teams suggest that the deep carbon biosphere may contain a substantial portion of Earth's microbial biomass. While these organisms are individually microscopic, their combined numbers are vast. Spread across sediments and crustal rocks beneath the oceans, they form one of the largest ecosystems on the planet. The existence of this hidden biosphere has important implications for understanding the limits of life. It demonstrates that biological systems can function in environments with almost no sunlight, extremely low energy availability, and immense geological pressures. These findings also influence research beyond Earth. Scientists studying the possibility of life on other worlds often consider environments similar to the subsea floor biosphere. For example, if microbial life ever developed beneath the surface of Mars or within the icy crust of moons such as Europa, it might rely on chemical energy derived from rocks and water rather than sunlight. The subsea floor biosphere therefore provides a natural example of how life might survive in environments that appear inhospitable from the surface. Investigating these ecosystems requires specialized drilling equipment capable of reaching deep beneath the ocean floor while preserving delicate microbial samples. Research vessels operated by international ocean drilling programs lower long drilling pipes into the seabed and extract cylindrical cores of sediment and rock. These cores are then examined carefully in laboratories. Scientists analyze the chemical composition of the samples, search for microbial cells using microscopes, and study the genetic material contained within the organisms. By sequencing DNA from these microbes, researchers can identify entirely new branches of microbial life that were previously unknown. Each discovery expands understanding of how life adapts to extreme conditions. It also reveals how deeply biology is intertwined with the geological processes shaping the planet. Beneath the sediments of the ocean floor, within cracks in ancient basalt and hidden pockets of mineral-rich water, microorganisms quietly carry out chemical reactions that have continued for immense spans of time. Their world is dark, slow, and largely invisible, yet it represents one of the most extensive ecosystems on Earth. The discovery of life kilometers beneath the seafloor reminds scientists that the boundaries of the biosphere extend far deeper than once imagined. In the silent depths beneath the ocean floor, life persists patiently, sustained by the chemistry of the planet itself. Far beneath the surface of the ocean lies one of the most important components of Earth's climate system. The deep ocean does not simply store water. It also holds enormous quantities of carbon, quietly circulating and preserving it across vast spans of time. In fact, the deep ocean acts as one of the largest carbon reservoirs on the entire planet. Carbon moves continuously through Earth's atmosphere, oceans, living organisms, and geological systems. This movement is known as the global carbon cycle. Plants and algae absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. Animals consume organic matter, returning carbon back to the atmosphere through respiration. Volcanic eruptions release carbon stored within Earth's interior, while weathering processes slowly remove carbon dioxide from the air. Within this vast cycle, the deep ocean plays a stabilizing role. Much of the carbon that enters the ocean does not remain near the surface. Instead, a portion gradually sinks into deeper waters and eventually settles into the sediments of the ocean floor. Once carbon reaches these depths, it may remain stored for hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years. One of the key processes responsible for transporting carbon from the surface ocean to the deep sea is known as the biological carbon pump. The biological carbon pump begins with microscopic photosynthetic organisms living near the ocean's surface. These organisms include phytoplankton, tiny plant-like cells that float within the sunlit layers of the ocean. Phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide from seawater and use sunlight to produce organic molecules through photosynthesis. In doing so, they convert dissolved carbon into living biological material. When phytoplankton die or are consumed by other organisms, some of that carbon begins a slow descent toward the deep ocean. Fragments of dead plankton, tiny shells, and clumps of organic debris drift downward through the water column. This falling material forms what oceanographers call marine snow. As marine snow sinks, it transports carbon away from the surface waters and toward deeper layers of the ocean. Much of this organic matter is consumed along the way by microorganisms and small animals living in the water column. These organisms break down organic molecules and release carbon dioxide back into the surrounding water. However, a fraction of the sinking material continues downward, eventually reaching the seafloor. When this organic carbon arrives at the deep ocean floor, it becomes part of the sediment layer that slowly accumulates across abyssal plains and other deep ocean environments. Over time, these sediments bury carbon within the seabed, effectively removing it from rapid circulation in the atmosphere. Oceanographer John Martin made important contributions to understanding the processes controlling ocean productivity and carbon cycling. Through his research on nutrient availability in marine ecosystems, John Martin demonstrated how the growth of phytoplankton depends strongly on the presence of trace elements such as iron. In certain regions of the ocean, particularly parts of the Pacific Ocean, phytoplankton growth is limited not by sunlight or carbon dioxide, but by the scarcity of dissolved iron. John Martin's work helped establish the concept that even tiny amounts of nutrients can strongly influence the productivity of entire ocean ecosystems. Because phytoplankton play such a central role in the biological carbon pump, factors that affect their growth can influence how much carbon ultimately sinks into the deep ocean. In regions where phytoplankton productivity increases, greater quantities of organic matter may descend toward the seabed, strengthening the transport of carbon into deep water and sediments. Once organic carbon arrives at the seafloor, microbial activity begins to transform it further. Microorganisms living within ocean sediments break down organic molecules using chemical reactions that release energy for their metabolism. Some microbes consume oxygen as they decompose organic material, while others rely on alternative chemical pathways involving sulfate, methane, or other compounds. These microbial processes influence how much carbon remains buried within sediments and how much returns to the surrounding water as dissolved carbon dioxide or methane. In this way, microbial ecosystems act as gatekeepers within the carbon cycle, determining the long-term fate of organic carbon stored on the ocean floor. In many deep ocean regions, decomposition proceeds very slowly. The low temperatures, limited oxygen availability, and sparse supply of organic matter all contribute to reduced microbial activity. As a result, significant portions of carbon may remain buried within sediments for extremely long periods. Over geological time, layers of sediment containing organic carbon accumulate across the ocean basins. Some of this carbon may eventually become part of sedimentary rock formations buried deep within Earth's crust. In this way, the ocean floor becomes a long-term archive of carbon removed from the atmosphere. The influence of the deep ocean extends beyond simple storage. Ocean circulation patterns also play a major role in regulating carbon exchange between the ocean and the atmosphere. Cold, dense water formed in polar regions sinks and flows slowly through the deep ocean basins. This process transports dissolved carbon dioxide into the depths, where it may remain isolated from the atmosphere for centuries. Eventually, these deep waters return to the surface through upwelling processes in various parts of the world's oceans. During this return journey, some of the stored carbon may re-enter the atmosphere. The balance between carbon entering and leaving the deep ocean helps regulate atmospheric carbon dioxide levels over long timescales. Scientists studying past climate changes have discovered that variations in ocean circulation and carbon storage have influenced Earth's climate throughout geological history. During certain periods, changes in ocean circulation may have allowed greater amounts of carbon to remain trapped in deep waters, reducing the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and contributing to cooler global temperatures. Conversely, disruptions in ocean circulation or large-scale geological events could release stored carbon back into the atmosphere, influencing climate in the opposite direction. For this reason, many researchers believe that deep ocean carbon storage plays a stabilizing role in Earth's long-term climate system. By absorbing and slowly cycling vast quantities of carbon, the deep ocean acts as a buffer that moderates changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide. The processes involved operate slowly and quietly, often unfolding over thousands or millions of years, yet their impact on the global climate system is profound. The steady sinking of organic matter, the slow burial of carbon within sediments, and the gradual circulation of deep ocean waters together shape the balance of carbon within the Earth system. Far beneath the waves, in dark waters and silent sediment layers, the deep ocean continues its patient work. Carbon drifts downward, settles into the seafloor, and becomes part of a cycle that links microscopic organisms, planetary climate, and geological time itself. For a long time, scientists assumed that deep ocean ecosystems depended entirely on sunlight produced near the surface of the planet. After all, nearly all known life on Earth ultimately traced its energy back to photosynthesis. Plants, algae, and microscopic phytoplankton capture sunlight and convert carbon dioxide into organic molecules. Those molecules then move through food webs, feeding animals and microorganisms across land and sea. The deep as the water. Instead, hydrogen sulfide is a compound produced when sulfur within the Earth's crust reacts with hot water, circulating through hydrothermal systems. Although this chemical is toxic to many forms of life, specialized microbes can use it as a source of energy. By transferring electrons during chemical reactions involving hydrogen sulfide and oxygen or other compounds, these microorganisms release energy that allows them to build organic molecules. In essence, these microbes form the foundation of an entirely different type of ecosystem. Instead of sunlight fueling food webs, chemical energy from Earth's interior becomes the primary driver of biological productivity. One of the most striking organisms found at hydrothermal vents is the giant tube worm. These animals, belonging to the species Riftia pachyptila, can grow more than 2 meters long. Their bodies consist of long white tubes anchored to the seafloor, topped with bright red plumes that extend into the surrounding water. At first glance, these creatures appear almost alien. Even more remarkable is the fact that giant tube worms have no digestive system. They lack a mouth, stomach, and intestines entirely. Instead, their survival depends on a close partnership with symbiotic bacteria living within their tissues. Inside the body of each tube worm is a specialized organ known as a trophosome. This organ contains dense populations of bacteria capable of carrying out chemosynthesis. The worm absorbs hydrogen sulfide, oxygen, and carbon dioxide from the surrounding water through its red plume. These chemicals are then transported through the worm's bloodstream to the symbiotic bacteria. The bacteria use the chemical energy stored in hydrogen sulfide to produce organic molecules, which in turn nourish the worm itself. In this relationship, both organisms benefit. The bacteria gain access to a stable environment and a steady supply of chemicals, while the worm receives nutrients produced through chemosynthesis. Hydrothermal vent ecosystems also host a wide range of other organisms adapted to extreme conditions. Crabs, shrimp, mussels, and various species of fish gather around the vents, forming complex communities centered on chemical energy rather than sunlight. Temperatures near hydrothermal vents can vary dramatically. Water emerging directly from the vent openings may reach temperatures exceeding several hundred degrees Celsius, while surrounding seawater remains near freezing. Many organisms survive by occupying narrow zones where conditions remain stable enough to support life. These environments demonstrate how life can thrive in places once thought completely inhospitable. They also provide valuable clues about how life may have originated on Earth. Some scientists believe that early life on our planet may have emerged in environments similar to modern hydrothermal vent systems. During the early history of Earth, volcanic activity and chemical reactions between seawater and newly formed crust may have produced abundant energy-rich compounds. These chemical gradients could have driven the earliest metabolic reactions long before complex photosynthetic organisms evolved. Hydrothermal vents therefore act as natural laboratories where researchers can study how chemistry, geology, and biology interact under extreme conditions. By examining these systems, scientists gain insight into how simple chemical reactions might have gradually evolved into the complex biological processes seen today. The discovery of hydrothermal vent ecosystems also expanded understanding of where life might exist beyond Earth. If organisms can thrive in deep ocean environments powered entirely by chemical energy, similar ecosystems might exist on other worlds with liquid water and geological activity. Moons, such as Europa and Enceladus, are believed to contain subsurface oceans beneath thick layers of ice. If hydrothermal activity occurs within those hidden oceans, chemical energy from planetary interiors could potentially support microbial life similar to that found near hydrothermal vents on Earth. Far beneath the ocean surface, where sunlight never reaches and pressure is immense, hydrothermal vents reveal a remarkable truth about life on our planet. Energy does not always arrive from the sky. Sometimes it rises quietly from the depth of the Earth itself, carrying with it the power to sustain entire ecosystems in the darkness of the deep sea. The deepest regions of Earth's oceans once seemed so extreme that many scientists believed complex life could not exist there at all. These environments are known as extreme environments because they operate far outside the temperature, pressure, or chemical conditions typical for most life. Examples include Antarctic dry valleys, acidic hot springs, hypersaline lakes, and of course the deep ocean. Each of these environments helps scientists understand how life adapts when conditions become challenging. The deep ocean has proven particularly important for this research. In earlier eras of science, the search for extraterrestrial life often focused on planets that might resemble Earth's surface. Researchers looked for places with sunlight, moderate temperatures, and atmospheres capable of supporting photosynthesis. Yet the discovery of thriving ecosystems around hydrothermal vents and within deep ocean sediments demonstrated that sunlight is not strictly required for life to exist. Instead, chemical energy can sustain entire biological communities. These plumes contain water, organic molecules, and tiny particles of mineral material believed to originate from a subsurface ocean. Evidence collected by spacecraft instruments suggests that hydrothermal activity may occur on the seafloor of Enceladus's hidden ocean. If hot water interacts with rock in a manner similar to hydrothermal vents on Earth, chemical energy could be released that might support microbial life. The discovery of life thriving around Earth's hydrothermal vents therefore provides an important model. If organisms can survive in darkness by harnessing chemical energy from reactions between water and rock, similar ecosystems might exist within the oceans of icy moons. The deep biosphere beneath Earth's ocean floor offers another powerful analogy. Microbes living kilometers beneath sediments and crustal rocks demonstrate that life can survive with extremely limited energy. These organisms often rely on slow chemical reactions involving hydrogen, sulfur, iron, or methane. Their metabolism proceeds at a remarkably gradual pace, sometimes taking years or centuries for cells to divide. Such slow-growing microbial ecosystems could theoretically exist in extraterrestrial environments, where energy sources are limited. If subsurface oceans on other worlds contain dissolved minerals and chemical gradients, microorganisms might exploit those resources in ways similar to deep biosphere microbes on Earth. Studying these organisms therefore provides valuable insight into what life might look like in alien oceans. Scientists can examine how microbes obtain energy, how they maintain cellular stability under pressure, and how biological molecules remain functional under unusual chemical conditions. Another important aspect of astrobiology involves protecting these potential extraterrestrial ecosystems from contamination. Space agencies around the world conduct research in a field known as planetary protection. Planetary protection focuses on preventing microorganisms from Earth from accidentally contaminating other worlds during space exploration. If spacecraft carrying terrestrial microbes were to reach environments capable of supporting life, those microbes might multiply and interfere with scientific investigations. Distinguishing native extraterrestrial life from accidental contamination would become extremely difficult. For this reason, spacecraft designed to explore potentially habitable environments undergo extensive sterilization procedures. Engineers and microbiologists work together to ensure that spacecraft surfaces carry as few living organisms as possible before launch. Planetary protection operates in two directions. Not only must scientists protect other worlds from contamination, but they must also ensure that potential extraterrestrial materials brought back to Earth are handled safely. Entire ecosystems operate in complete darkness, thousands of meters below the waves. These discoveries remind scientists that life is remarkably flexible. Given the right ingredients and sufficient time, biology may find ways to occupy environments that once appeared entirely uninhabitable. Far from being isolated curiosities, the deepest parts of Earth's oceans now serve as natural laboratories for understanding the possibilities of life throughout the universe. By studying the extreme environments hidden beneath the ocean floor, researchers continue to expand the boundaries of what life can endure and where it might one day be found beyond our own planet. Far below the quiet darkness of the deep ocean floor lies a far larger story about the inner workings of the planet itself. Ocean trenches are not simply deep scars carved into the seafloor. They are the visible surface expressions of enormous geological processes unfolding deep within Earth's interior. By studying these trenches, scientists gain insight into how the outer shell of the planet interacts with the layers beneath it. Earth is structured in several major layers. The outermost layer is known as the crust, a relatively thin shell of rock that forms the continents and the ocean basins. Beneath the crust lies the mantle, a vast region of hot rock extending thousands of kilometers toward the planet's center. At even greater depths lies the core, composed primarily of iron and nickel, and divided into outer and inner regions. Understanding the structure of these deep layers required decades of careful scientific investigation. One important contribution came from Danish seismologist Inger Lehmann. During the early 20th century, scientists were studying how seismic waves from earthquakes travelled through the Earth. By examining the paths of these waves, researchers could infer the internal structure of the planet. In 1936, Inger Lehmann carefully analysed seismic wave patterns, recorded from earthquakes around the world. Her work revealed evidence for a solid inner core located at the very centre of Earth, surrounded by a liquid outer core. This discovery significantly improved scientific understanding of Earth's internal structure and demonstrated how seismic waves could be used to investigate regions far beyond direct observation. Although the inner core lies thousands of kilometers beneath the surface, its discovery helped establish a broader framework for studying the entire interior of the planet. Ocean trenches play an important role within this framework because they mark locations where the crust itself is actively interacting with the deeper mantle. These interactions occur through a process known as subduction. In subduction zones, one tectonic plate bends downward and slides beneath another plate, descending into the mantle. This movement occurs slowly, typically at rates comparable to the growth of human fingernails, yet over millions of years it reshapes entire ocean basins and continents. Ocean trenches form precisely at these subduction boundaries. The trench marks the point where the descending plate begins its journey downward into the mantle. As the plate bends and sinks, it carries with it layers of oceanic crust, sediments, and sometimes water trapped within minerals. This process effectively recycles the oceanic crust back into the interior of the planet. While new crust forms continuously at mid-ocean ridges through volcanic activity, old crust eventually returns to the mantle through subduction. In this way, Earth maintains a dynamic surface where material is constantly being created and destroyed. The descending slab of crust may penetrate hundreds of kilometers into the mantle. As it sinks deeper, increasing temperature and pressure gradually transform the minerals within the rock. Water contained in those minerals may be released, influencing volcanic activity in regions located above the subducting plate. These geological interactions produce many of the world's most powerful earthquakes and volcanic systems. Regions such as the Pacific Ring of Fire exist largely because of subduction processes occurring around the edges of the Pacific Ocean basin. Ocean trenches therefore provide scientists with direct clues about how material moves between Earth's surface and its interior. By studying the rocks, sediments, and chemical signatures found near trench systems, researchers can learn about the composition of both the oceanic crust and the underlying mantle. One method used to investigate these processes is the analysis of volcanic rocks formed above subduction zones. As subducted material descends into the mantle, some of its components melt and rise back toward the surface through volcanic activity. These volcanic rocks often contain chemical signatures that reveal the presence of recycled oceanic crust. Another powerful tool used by geophysicists is seismic tomography. Seismic tomography is a technique that uses seismic waves generated by earthquakes to create three-dimensional images of Earth's interior. Much like medical imaging allows doctors to see structures inside the human body, seismic tomography allows scientists to visualize structures deep within the planet. When an earthquake occurs, it sends waves of energy traveling through Earth in all directions. These waves move at different speeds depending on the temperature, density, and composition of the rocks they pass through. By measuring how long seismic waves take to reach detectors located around the world, scientists can reconstruct images of the structures those waves encountered along the way. Using seismic tomography, researchers have been able to observe subducting slabs of oceanic crust descending into the mantle beneath major trench systems. In some cases, these slabs can be traced hundreds of kilometers downward, revealing the long path taken by recycled crust. These observations help scientists understand the circulation patterns operating within the mantle. Although the mantle behaves as solid rock over short timescales, over millions of years it flows slowly like an extremely viscous fluid. This movement, known as mantle convection, plays a central role in driving plate tectonics. As hot material rises within the mantle and cooler material sinks, the motion gradually shifts the tectonic plates resting above. Ocean trenches mark the downward part of this cycle, where cold, dense plates sink back into the mantle after travelling across the ocean floor for tens or hundreds of millions of years. The study of trench environments therefore contributes directly to the field of planetary geology. By examining how Earth's surface interacts with its interior, scientists gain insight into how rocky planets evolve over time. These processes are not unique to Earth. Other planetary bodies show evidence of geological activity driven by internal heat and crustal recycling. Understanding subduction and mantle dynamics on Earth helps researchers interpret geological features observed on planets and moons throughout the solar system. Far beneath the deep ocean, where tectonic plates bend and descend into the mantle, the planet quietly reshapes itself. Ocean trenches stand as gateways between Earth's surface and its interior, revealing the powerful forces that continually recycle the planet's crust and shape its geological future. The deep ocean is often imagined as a remote wilderness lying far beyond the reach of everyday life. Its darkness, pressure, and vast distance from the continents make it seem separate from the world people normally experience. Yet when viewed from a planetary perspective, the deep ocean is not a distant fringe environment at all. It is one of the largest ecosystems on Earth, stretching across immense regions of the planet and supporting forms of life that remain only partly understood. Most of the ocean's volume lies far below the sunlit surface waters. While the upper layers of the sea receive sunlight and support abundant photosynthetic organisms, the deeper regions occupy the majority of the ocean's space. From the mesopelagic zone down through the abyssal plains and into the trenches, this vast realm forms a continuous environment that covers enormous portions of the planet. Within this immense volume exists a remarkable variety of life. Some organisms drift through the water column, others inhabit the sediments of the seafloor. Still others live hidden within the rocks and pores beneath the ocean floor itself. Taken together, these environments form a deep biosphere that extends across much of the planet's surface and deep into its crust. The scale of this biosphere is difficult to imagine. Microbial communities inhabit sediments across the abyssal plains, occupy hydrothermal vent systems along mid-ocean ridges, and extend downward into fractures within the oceanic crust. Even deeper microbial ecosystems exist within rocks buried beneath the seafloor. Although many of these organisms are microscopic, their collective biomass is enormous. Researchers studying deep biosphere environments estimate that microbial life beneath the ocean floor may represent a substantial fraction of Earth's total living mass. This means that a significant portion of the planet's life exists in environments that remain largely invisible to direct observation. As scientists have explored these hidden ecosystems, they have encountered an unexpected challenge. Many microorganisms discovered in deep environments do not resemble any previously known forms of life. Their genetic sequences differ so dramatically from familiar organisms that they represent entirely new branches on the tree of life. Microbiologist Jill Banfield has been one of the leading researchers investigating this phenomenon. Through the use of modern genetic sequencing techniques, Jill Banfield and her colleagues have studied microbial communities from a wide range of environments, including deep subsurface ecosystems. One of the ideas that emerge from this research is sometimes described as microbial dark matter. The term refers to the vast number of microbial lineages that exist in nature, but remain poorly understood or difficult to cultivate in laboratory settings. Just as dark matter in astronomy represents unseen components of the universe inferred from indirect evidence, microbial dark matter represents forms of life detected through genetic signals, but rarely observed directly. Traditional microbiology relied heavily on growing organisms in laboratory cultures, yet many deep biosphere microbes cannot easily be cultivated using standard techniques. Instead, scientists detect their presence by sequencing fragments of genetic material recovered from environmental samples. These genetic studies have revealed extraordinary diversity. Entire groups of microorganisms have been identified solely through their DNA sequences. Some belong to lineages that diverged from other organisms billions of years ago. Others possess metabolic pathways that challenge previous assumptions about how life obtains energy. The growing field of environmental genomics continues to uncover new microbial lineages from deep ocean sediments, hydrothermal systems, and subsea floor environments. Each discovery expands the known diversity of life and reveals how much remains unexplored within the deep biosphere. These hidden microbial communities do not exist in isolation. They interact continuously with the surrounding environment, influencing chemical cycles that operate across the planet. Microorganisms participate in the transformation of carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and many other elements as they carry out their metabolic processes. In the deep ocean and subsea floor environments, Microbial reactions slowly alter the chemistry of sediments, rocks, and seawater. These transformations influence the long-term storage of carbon in ocean sediments, the release of methane and other gases, and the movement of nutrients through marine ecosystems. Because the deep biosphere extends across such vast regions of the planet, its cumulative influence on planetary chemistry may be significant. Even though individual microbes operate slowly, their combined activity over millions of years contributes to the gradual reshaping of Earth's chemical environment. This perspective highlights the deep connection between surface life and the hidden ecosystems beneath the ocean floor. Organic material produced by photosynthetic organisms near the ocean surface eventually sinks into the deep sea, supplying energy to microorganisms living within sediments. In turn, microbial activity within those sediments influences how carbon and nutrients circulate through the oceans. The deep biosphere therefore forms part of a global network linking life at the surface, with processes occurring far below the seafloor. Energy and chemical elements move slowly through this network, connecting environments separated by enormous distances. These discoveries have reshaped how scientists think about Earth as a living planet. For much of scientific history, life was studied primarily in visible environments such as forests, grasslands, and shallow oceans. The recognition that vast ecosystems exist deep beneath the ocean floor expands the known boundaries of the biosphere. Earth now appears less like a thin layer of life clinging to the planet's surface, and more like a complex system where biology and geology intertwine across many levels. Microbes influence the chemistry of rocks. Geological processes shape habitats for living organisms. Together, these interactions form a dynamic system that has evolved over billions of years. The deep ocean and deep biosphere remind scientists that the planet's living systems extend far beyond the environments that humans easily observe. Hidden beneath kilometers of water and sediment lies a vast network of microbial life, quietly shaping the chemistry and history of the Earth. In the darkness of the deep ocean, life continues its slow and patient work. Invisible to most observers, yet present across enormous regions of the planet, these ecosystems form one of the largest and most mysterious realms within Earth's biosphere. Far out in the western Pacific Ocean lies a long, narrow valley cut deep into the seafloor. This valley, known as the Mariana Trench, represents the deepest confirmed environment anywhere on Earth. At its lowest point, a location called Challenger Deep, the ocean descends nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface. Above, sunlight illuminates the open sea. Below, the water grows darker, colder, and heavier until it reaches pressures so intense that most familiar materials would struggle to survive. For much of human history, this remote region existed only as a number on maps and scientific charts. Sailors crossing the Pacific knew that deep waters lay beneath them, but the true scale of those depths remained unimaginable. Only in the 20th century did technology allow scientists to begin measuring and exploring the deepest parts of the ocean. What they discovered gradually reshaped understanding of the planet. At the deepest points of the ocean, water presses inward with extraordinary force. Pressure increases steadily as depth increases because the weight of the water above grows greater and greater. By the time one reaches the floor of Challenger Deep, the surrounding pressure exceeds 1,000 times the pressure experienced at sea level. Every square centimeter of surface must withstand forces comparable to the weight of a small car. Such conditions profoundly influence the behavior of matter. Materials compress slightly under immense pressure. Chemical reactions change. The structure of proteins, membranes, and biological molecules can be altered by the surrounding force of the ocean. Yet life persists even here. Organisms living in the deepest trenches have evolved remarkable biochemical strategies that allow them to survive where most life would fail. Proteins remain stable despite compression. Cell membranes retain their flexibility. Specialized molecules help maintain the delicate structure of biological systems under extreme pressure. Some of the animals inhabiting these environments appear fragile and delicate at first glance. Translucent snailfish drift slowly near the trench floor. Amphipods scuttle through sediment searching for organic material drifting down from the waters above. Sea cucumbers crawl across the mud in a patient search for nutrients. Yet behind this gentle appearance lies a biology carefully adapted to one of the most demanding environments on the planet. Life in the deep ocean depends on subtle flows of energy. In many regions, food arrives slowly from the surface in the form of marine snow. Tiny particles of organic matter drift downward through the water column, settling onto the seafloor where deep sea organisms wait to consume them. This steady rain of nutrients supports ecosystems that operate at a quiet, deliberate pace. Elsewhere in the ocean, hydrothermal vents create entirely different ecosystems, powered not by sunlight, but by chemical energy rising from Earth's interior. Microorganisms living around these vents use chemical reactions, involving hydrogen sulfide and other compounds to generate energy through chemosynthesis. Around them gather strange and fascinating communities of animals, including giant tube worms whose survival depends on symbiotic bacteria. Even deeper discoveries emerged when scientists began examining the sediments and rocks beneath the seafloor. Microbial life was found not only on the surface of the ocean floor but kilometers below it, inhabiting tiny pores and fractures within sediment and crustal rock. These microorganisms form what scientists now call the deep biosphere. They exist in darkness, often surviving with extremely limited energy supplies. Some may reproduce only rarely, perhaps taking years or even centuries between cellular divisions. Yet collectively, these microbes represent an enormous portion of Earth's living system. The discovery of such ecosystems expanded the known boundaries of life on the planet. Biology was no longer confined to environments rich in sunlight and nutrients. Instead, life could exist in conditions once considered far beyond its limits. These findings also revealed how deeply interconnected Earth's systems truly are. Carbon produced by microscopic organisms near the ocean surface may eventually sink into the deep sea, where it becomes part of sediment layers or is processed by microbial communities beneath the seafloor. Chemical reactions occurring within the crust influence ocean chemistry, while tectonic processes recycle crustal material back into the mantle. The deep ocean therefore acts as both a biological and geological crossroads. It connects the surface world of sunlight and weather with the slow, powerful forces shaping the planet's interior. Despite these discoveries, much of the deep ocean remains unexplored. Large regions of the seafloor have yet to be mapped in detail. Many species living in abyssal and trench environments remain unknown to science. Entire microbial ecosystems continue to be revealed through advances in genetic sequencing and deep-sea exploration. Each new expedition into these depths reveals fresh surprises. Unusual animals appear in places once thought barren. Chemical processes unfold in ways scientists had not previously imagined. Hidden geological structures reshape understanding of how the planet evolves. The oceans cover more than 2/3 of Earth's surface, and most of their depth lies far below the reach of sunlight. In this immense environment, countless processes unfold quietly and slowly, shaping the chemistry, biology, and geology of the planet. Standing on a shoreline or sailing across the open sea, it is easy to imagine the ocean as a surface stretching toward the horizon. Yet beneath that surface lies a world descending into darkness and pressure, a world as vast and complex as any landscape on land. The Mariana Trench reminds us of the extraordinary scale of the planet's hidden environments. Far below the waves, in places where light never reaches and the water presses inward with immense force, life continues its patient work. These depths remain among the least explored regions of Earth. They hold ecosystems still waiting to be discovered, geological processes still being understood, and clues that may illuminate the history of the planet itself. In the quiet darkness of the deep ocean, far beneath storms, ships, and coastlines, the Earth continues to reveal its mysteries slowly and calmly, one discovery at a time.